Hi, I'm Connie Sokol, a national speaker, best-selling author, program founder, and mother of 7, and loving it. I'm reaching and teaching 1 million listeners to live a purposeful, organized, and joyful life. You can too, so let's go.
Welcome back to Money Mindset Mentors. And as always, we're talking money, we're talking mindset, and we are mentoring you in being able to move forward in your money messages and your money projects. If you're wanting to save money, you don't know how. If you want to invest money, you don't know how. If you want to understand the language of money, you don't know how, this is the place. So today it is Amanda and I. Amanda, so fun to see you again.
You too.
It's so great. This is just so fun. This is how we get to see each other, right? She's in California. This is how we see each other. So we are going to talk turkey today. Right before Thanksgiving, we're going to talk about budgets, which is that word that everyone's like, oh, don't talk to me about that thing that makes me feel guilty. We're going to talk about how not to feel guilty about a budget and just some tips and tools on using a working budget. How many of us have had a budget, used a budget, and then not really use it effectively? So budgeting wisely, and then also a few holiday saving money tips, because that is hot on everybody's minds with food inflation being up 13%. It's just really pricey to do a lot of things today. We're going to talk about both those things. So right out of the gate, as Dave Ramsey, certified financial coach, and Amanda, tell us what are some of the initial steps on creating a usable budget that works for you.
So first, step number 1 is understanding the purpose of a budget, right? A lot of people think that, oh, if I'm broke, then I need to use a budget because that's what a budget is there for. But that could not be further from the truth. The truth is that a budget is what allows you to know where your money is and to know where your money's going. And it really allows you to plan for the future and decide where do you want your money to go. So one thing that Dave Ramsey always says that I love, and I actually have it in my office right above where my computer is. And it says on paper, on purpose. And I think that is so important because you're not just putting things down in a budget to check a box off. You're putting it down for a reason. And that reason is to really start using your money in an effective way that works for you. If you want to raise, do a budget. If you want to start finding money to invest, do a budget. If you want to start saving for holiday shopping, do a budget. It really allows you to see those things that maybe you can cut or things that you can go without completely, right? So it really helps you out. So that would be my tip number 1, is understanding that a budget is working for you, not against you. It's not because you're broke. And the other thing that I love is statistics show that anybody that is successful works within the frame of a budget. Broke people don't work on a budget.
In fact, that from the book, The Millionaire Next Door, they talk a lot about people like that, millionaires that you wouldn't even recognize, that they use a budget, they clip the coupons, they do these things that you think, well, by the time you're a millionaire, you don't have to do that anymore. Nah, that it is a respect for money and that you are a wise steward of that money.
Yeah. And it's that accountability part, right? It's that part where you put it on the budget. And that's the other thing too, is a working budget doesn't mean you set it and forget it. That's not how it works. A budget works for the previous month. So what me and my husband like to do is we'll sit down at the end of the month, the last week right there, that last Friday, we'll go on a date, we'll get away from the house and we sit down with our budget and we start budgeting in. Okay, so November's coming up. What do we need to be thinking about? Well, our budget's going to shift and it's going to change in November in ways that it wasn't in October, because we have a flight, we're going to go visit family, we're going to have travel plans, so we budget that in. We know that that's coming. And so that goes into our budget and we start budgeting that in. And then we meet again at the end of the month. And the first thing that we do, so once we set up we meet in October, we set up for November. Then at the end of November, we start checking our budget, right? Like, oh, we budgeted for this, but it didn't quite cost that much. So we have this little bit of extra and that money has to go somewhere. And my rule that I've learned from Dave Ramsey that I love, it is like the beauty of a budget is you budget every single dollar. It doesn't mean you have zero place. Yes. It doesn't mean you have $0 in your account. It means that you have told every single dollar in your account what its job is and what it's doing.
I love that. And again, being that steward over money and also in your own mind, I think that just helps when you're at Costco, and you see those things and you're like, but it's on sale, but I'm here. I may as well get, right? Oh, that could be food storage, that you're able to pull it back and go, you know what? That $50 or $150 was supposed to be used for this. That's right. There's a purpose for that money, and I can budget this one for, say, next month or in 2 months or something like that. And I think it gives that sort of top of mind, oh, that's right. What was the purpose of that? Excellent.
Yeah. And I also think, let's say you are at Costco and you're like, but it's on sale and I'm going to get that. And so you get that. Let's say you get it anyway, and you didn't budget for it. Well, that money has to come from somewhere. So now you have to look at, well, where's it going to come from? What are you willing to sacrifice for that good deal? And there's been a lot of times that me and my husband, we've had to do that, right? So he's getting ready to go on his guys trip for the year, and they always take the 4-wheelers out. And so he goes in and he starts up the 4-wheeler and he's like, oh, it's not running. I've got to take that in. And it was an expense we didn't plan for. And it was a larger expense than that we didn't already plan for. And now it's even larger than what we thought. And so he says, well, I have to get it done. And I go, okay, but what are you giving up? Where's the money coming from? Like, I'm not saying you can't do that. Like, that's not it at all. It's that money has to come from something. So if you're going to do this, what are we pulling from? And so we chose not to eat in instead of eating out. We chose to cut right there. We chose to cut in other areas so that he could still go and enjoy that.
And I love that you're doing that together. Like, you're both committed to that and saying, hey, then let's both eat in. And there's a satisfaction to that. We did that and we had that discipline, and that makes eating in or whatever just that much more wonderful and more fulfilling, because you're like, we know that we did this for a higher purpose. So let me ask you a question that I hear from women frequently. What happens when two of you have different views about money and about the budget? What is a good rule of thumb or some tips there?
Well, first of all, when you're doing a budget, you should always sit right next to each other, right next to each other, side by side, because you have to do a budget side by side. If one is in and one is out, that budget is not going to work for you. You have to come together. So my suggestion would be, there is this form, and I would be more than happy to, I don't know if I can put it in the comments. Yes, I will definitely show it to you. But it is actually a 360 on your relationship. So when you're feeling like you're not there, you're not ready to create a budget yet, you need to look at your money patterns. And so it is a relationship money pattern survey that you just quickly go through and you find out what your money behaviors are. And then your spouse does the same, and then you swap them. And so you look at, okay, this is what their behavior is. This is this behavior. And then it has some next steps, because before you've got to be on the same page to really create a successful, useful budget. Can you imagine if I would have said to my husband, oh, well, looks like you're not going on the boys' trip? The day would have been a disaster, right? It would not have happened, nor do I want that, because I do girls' trips. And so I don't want that. I want him to go. I want him to have fun. I want to make our budget work for us. Otherwise, he's going to resent the budget. I'm going to resent the budget. We're going to say this budget thing is dumb. We don't want to continue it. But because we have that flexibility and we're able to say, okay, it has to come from somewhere. So we've already pre-planned this, and we can tweak the budget. You can tweak it along the way. But at the end of the day, every dollar has to go somewhere, and we have to decide, what are we giving up?
I love that. And I love that idea of patterns, looking at patterns so that there's awareness, there's education that says so much more than someone sitting and saying, this is this and that is that, or how come this is this, or whatever. It's being able to look at your own patterns. And I love that idea of switching it so that you can better understand the reasoning behind your partner's patterns and why they do what they do with money, which sometimes may not make sense to people. And I think there's also such a benefit when you understand those patterns that you can have a little more compromise. Some people are just more the strict, right? They every dollar, every penny, and they reconcile it, and that's the way it needs to be. And other people are more free spirits of, let's be generous, let's be abundant, let's look, this will all work out in the wash. And I've actually seen both ways work. They're both very successful. I think it's a beautiful thing when there's a little bit of compromise for the exact situation or thing to be able to say, what's better in this situation? Do we need a more abundance mindset, or do we need to be a little bit more disciplined in this particular situation? And I think that gives a little bit more leeway to each person of, we're not following one person's methodology. We're actually taking those gifts and skills and saying, how do we best apply it to this situation or item that we want to purchase?
Mm-hmm. And how does it work for us? Because that's the thing, is it's going to be so individualized per household. It's going to look so different that you really have to come together and decide, what does that budget look like? And when I coach people, a lot of couples will say, well, my partner thinks this should be in the budget, and I think this shouldn't be in the budget. And what do you think? And my response is, well, no, what do you think? Like, this is a decision the two of you need to make. So what is your reasoning for wanting it in the budget? What is your reasoning for not wanting it in the budget? How does that feel to you guys? This is your working budget. This is what you two have to agree to,
Exactly. And I love that you can be that third person buffer and then offer some insights and tools that they may not have considered to kind of help them in either side, but they know that you have no agenda, that you're just there to help them to come to a place that feels right for them and their budget. That's something not only can they create, but that they can sustain, because the sustainability is so huge. So one more question on this. Do you have suggestions for tracking the budget? I heard you say that you meet at the end of the month and you do that, but I know there's envelopes and there's all different kinds of, different methodologies and things like that. Do you have any that you would recommend?
Yes, I would recommend Every Dollar. It's an app. You download it on your phone. It's one that Dave Ramsey has founded, and it's beautiful. It's free. There's a free version and a paid version. The free version is what I use. It works great. It allows you to go in, and you can link it with your bank account if you want to. You do not have to do that. That is up to you. So you go in and you set your income. How much are you going to be making? How many times a month? You put that all in there, and then you can add your categories. It works like envelopes. So you put it all in. Then you, if you don't link your bank accounts, then you will need to go in on the back end of it, and you will need to say, okay, here's my bank account. This much came out for gas. This much came out for gas. And you'll pull from that to see what's remaining and what's left over. It also allows you to, like for me and my husband in our four-wheeler situation, it allowed me to go, okay, we didn't budget for that. We don't have a budget for that. So where are we going to pull from? And it allowed me to create a budget and then pull from another account. So now in our tracking, I can see that I had to pull that. So what me and my husband did, what that told us when we sat down and we really started to look at the budget and what we needed, we now know that moving forward for next year, we will have a care budget there for these type of expenses. That now instead of it being such a large amount coming out at once, we can start just adding to it that little bit that we need to throughout the year.
That's so genius. And you can even hook that on to car or vehicle maintenance, right? But you don't have 52,000 different categories. You can just hook them on with ones that make sense as well, so that you just know it's in that pool and you can do that. And I know we would do that for years with our vacation and a special memory making trip things, that we wouldn't have a lot of accounts, and I don't have a lot of accounts out, but I do have them named for certain things so that I know if this is a big, big account, then I know that that's what we're funneling everything into. And for a long time, I funneled a lot of stuff into just one big account. And then we made it a money market so that it was earning a nice, much nicer interest than just your regular, so that everything pulled into there. And then we would withdraw for whatever the specific other accounts were that we wanted. So we get it all in there, and then we just pull out on the certain times when we needed it. So I love that. That's an easy way to track all of those things happening so that it doesn't get confusing and overwhelming.
Yeah. And I would say this too, like that again is individual. That is what works for me. And I really like it. It's been successful with me and my husband, but it may not work for somebody else. Somebody may want to actually physically write everything out, and that's okay. Find what works for you. This is your working budget. Have fun, play with it. And the other thing is, if you feel like you bombed really bad the first couple times, then you're successful, because that's what you're going to do. This is something that is trial and error. You might be like, oh, I'm going to be really, really strict with what we're going to do over here, and this is what our budget's going to look like. And you might find, wow, we had some medical bills that came up and that didn't work so well. And you'll just know how to tweak. So just know that it's a work in progress, and you get to tweak it as you grow it.
And I love how you made a point, I think it was last week or the week before, that you said this budget is a living thing. So it's going to be different every month. Give yourself permission to know it's not this stamp of a cookie cutter. It's a working, living document. So you get to adjust it, just like you said, going into the holidays. It is normal for it to look different. So don't feel badly about that. Just adjust for it. I love that. And I thought about when you said, whatever works for you, do what works. That I remember J.W. Marriott said that for years, the first 7 or 9 years of their business, they just literally used a ledger that they hand wrote in and outgo, right? Income and outgo. And that was it. That was how they tracked their stuff, and worked well for him. So I think that's beautiful. Thank you for those beautiful tips on a budget. And again, this is just for you to get a jump start or to tidy up what you already have, or have this joyful thought and feeling about it. So I encourage you to get your favorite treat, and then set aside half an hour to just go through your budget, maybe an hour if you feel like it's going to take an hour. Go through the main categories. Don't get in all the nitty gritty yet. Just sit down and just start brain dumping. What are the main categories? And then you can go in and start putting subcategories under it and go, okay, so I can work with an average of 5 to 7, maybe 10 max categories, so you're not overwhelmed. And do that, and then eat a yummy treat and go, wow, look what I did. And then do the next step, which is, okay, now maybe I'm going to take those categories, take that information, I'm going to go into every dollar or whatever app I want, and then I'm going to start that next step of, okay, how do I itemize this down? Take those beautiful baby steps and make it actually realistic, because there is a confidence and a clarity and a joy and a fulfillment when you have a working budget and you know where the money's supposed to go and you know your financial situation. There is such a confidence that comes from that, and a happiness and a generosity, an abundance of mindset and action when you have that. Any last thoughts on the budget before we go right to the money saving?
Yes, I want to just share a quick story about one of my children, which I believe, like, I will not say this person's name. So calls me up and he's like, Mom, I have a problem. And I says, well, what's your problem? And he goes, I feel like I got roped into buying a purchase that I didn't want. And I says, oh, well, tell me more about that. And he goes, well, I had the money and the person knew I had the money because it was my payday and they knew I had the money. And what they said to me is, hey, let's make this deal. Like, I know that you want this, something that I have. I'm not going to tell you what it is because people who know my kids will then know which kid it is.
Yeah.
So I want this something, like, I know you want this something you've eyed up for a long time and I'm willing to like part with it. Do you want to make a sweet deal on this? And so my son was like, yeah. And he's like, well, a handshake is worth everything. So stands up and they take a handshake on it. And my son says, well, how much? And he says, $1,000. And my son, who is in this business and knows that this is not a good deal. But he's like, Mom, he kept saying to me, but we got a handshake and you're a man of your word. Okay, well, to my kids, that's a big deal, right? And I said, well, what'd you learn from this? And he goes, not to trust him. And I says, I would invite you to consider what would have happened if you had a budget. If you would have had a budget and you would have said, I want this, it would have been really easy for you to say, that doesn't fit in my budget. And he goes, oh, yeah, I need to get my budget going.
Beautiful. Oh, a few words that have changed the course of his life, right? And you couldn't even try to teach that in a family night thing and have it be as effective. That is so true. And I call a lot of those, and we can talk about this on another episode, those big money mistakes. And it's all relative, right? Could be $25, could be $25,000, but those big money mistakes, they're such teaching lessons. Some of the most painful but purposeful lessons I've learned along the way have been from those big money mistakes. And I feel like the good Lord above is so kind in that he really does bring that bread back upon the waters, that as we learn from that, we go forward and we have that new understanding, we have new opportunities to apply it. And he brings us back what we have lost in the back end, especially as we try to move forward with better choices. I love that. Excellent. All right, let's switch gears for just a moment and let's go to this. It's holiday times. I can't even believe I'm having a hard time reconciling that we're not in August. Like, I just don't understand, how did we get to November, almost mid-November? So tell us, what are some holiday savings that we can maybe be looking out for, or ways to save money? Because it's a big deal right now. Inflation is hitting everyone so hard. And even with the best intentions, it's like, okay, but this is the reality. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love going to scriptures for this. I absolutely love that we can do a lot with small things, right? It's those small things that make a big, huge impact and that mean the most. When my kids are all raised now and have flown the coop, and as we talk about this with them, and I always ask them, what were your favorite gifts around the holidays? And they always tell me it was those personal, small moments, those family making memories. And so I would invite you to consider what might that look like? If money is really tight for you right now, what might that look like? What would a photo album, right? Or something. I know I love to do letters for my kids. That was something that I did one year and they loved it. And they have all the letters I've ever written them. So those are just things that I love to do. Looking for those small, memorable, meaningful things. It doesn't always have to be this big production.
Exactly. And I think we feel the pressure. Like I even have this book on Simplify and Savor the Season. This isn't a shameless plug. Like I even have this book and we follow those principles. And even me, a few days ago, when someone started talking about holidays, I got that like, oh my gosh, I've got to get on this. I've got it. And then I came back from the ledges and went, I know how we do this. We just choose our 5 to 7 top essentials and blah, blah, blah. And we go through this plan. And I went, okay, I can back it up. So I love that idea. And we talk about memory maker moments. What are those? And we usually try to do every other year, we do a memory maker trip, at least every other year, if not every year, where we take what maybe we would have spent on certain things and then we put that into a trip so that we have those memories. But I also think other things that can be done, and I love those suggestions you made. We've done those same things. We've actually made ornaments to send to family members. So it's something that's a keeper and they can keep with it, and then include like a famous treat from Utah. That's something that's more like Utah Central. We also have done humanitarian donations. So we will do that. And then on an ornament, we will do an ornament that has like a little something about that humanitarian thing and say, you donated to this particular cause. So they have something on their tree that they remember it from. So there are easy, simple things to do. And I think sometimes we feel guilty or like, oh, but that's not going to be enough, or they're not going to think that that's really that cool. But I am here to say that when I get things that are more memory made and things like that, like I've just had something donated in our family name to a nonprofit or a humanitarian thing, I'm so thrilled. I'm like, we just did good and we didn't even know it. Like, how awesome is that? So I don't think we need to worry so much about production. And I think if COVID taught us anything, it is going back to those small and simple things, those core things that create those memories that actually last. So I love that. Any other thoughts and tips?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to share one thing that my family loves to do. Loved to do now that they're all grown. We don't do it. But one thing they loved doing when they were young, and we did it forever, is we do the 12 days of Christmas. But we didn't do the 12 days of Christmas like everybody else. We gave away a manger set and we broke the pieces up. Well, we didn't break them up, but instead of giving a whole manger set, and my kids would tell the story from the perspective of whatever object we gave. So if we gave the star, then my kids I would say, what do you think it was like that night? What do you think it was like for the star? And they would talk about what that was like, and we would write that down, and that's what we would give. And then on Christmas Day, we didn't give anything on Christmas Eve, but then on Christmas Day, we would give the baby Jesus. And it was so tender and sweet, and my kids loved that.
That is a great idea. I love that. And I love hearing that. I've heard that a little bit before, but I love the idea of you have the kids write down from their perspective of each of those days. That makes it so much more personal. I love that. And another thought on the traditions that we do, we can simplify them, right? We don't have to go to 8 different Christmas celebration things. We can take some of that money and put it towards a humanitarian thing, or put it towards a memory making experience. Or instead of when we used to do gingerbread houses, and we do those big gingerbread houses that were already done for you and everything, because that's 7 kids, that's how I'm making it happen. But then I got wise and I started doing little small ones per person. And not only was it cheaper, but it was less cleanup and it was shorter. So there was not as many fights. And so it all worked out so well. Half an hour, made a memory. Let's watch Charlie Brown Christmas. Right? So I loved that it just was a simplified way of doing what we're doing. So you can look at that also of maybe put more thought into the wrapping. One year I had the kids draw pictures on the wrapping. It was the brown paper wrap, and had them draw their favorite sports and things like that, and who wrapped what, right? And then you can put little natural pine, branches and sprigs and things like that, and twine. So it just looks that warm, old-fashioned kind of thing. It doesn't have to be all dressed up. So I love that. Another thing, I was watching the Today Show this morning on the treadmill, and they were talking about the saving costs for food. And one gal said she had been a single mom for a long time. And the Today Show lady, the senior correspondent on the economics, and her went into the grocery store, and then they both shopped for 4 people, and they saw who could do it less, right? And so the senior correspondent did $65 and this lady did $62. And she's like, okay, so I didn't do so bad. And this lady said, yeah, but I can feed 8. I got double. So she did things like she took a loaf of bread and she said, I can make my own stuffing. I don't have to buy the bagged whatever. Now, I know there's people who are like, I will pay for the ease and convenience. Sweet, no worries. But know that that's in your budget, and you're saying, I want to choose that. But there were all these little short, beautiful shortcuts that were like, you know what, if I just did this, I did mashed potatoes and I didn't buy catered mashed potatoes, and just did mashed potatoes myself, but catered these other 2 pieces, and then did the turkey, it's done, and it's still just as easy. And I just saved a whole bunch of money. So again, some of these tips, we would love to hear any of your holiday money saving tips. We would love to hear them below, because we know we're only touching on this for half a second, and we may just even come back to this again, but we would love your tips and tools to share with everybody of cool, fun, simple things that you can just a little bit here, a little bit there, can make such a difference. Any last thoughts, sweet Amanda?
No, I think that's good. I'm actually like wanting to check the comments right now just to see, like, I'm like, yes, give me your tips. Like, I cannot wait.
Well, we will be checking and we will be responding. And just so you know, we have these other Money Mindset Mentor episodes every Thursday. You can check them out and go back on the feed in Purpose-Filled Women, and you can check them out. We talk about investing, preparing to invest, what do you need to get your ducks in a row, all the things, how to property manage, what to do with the different lingo and terms and short-term rentals, and what does all this mean, and how can you utilize it for good in a wise and savvy way to take that 2 talents, 5 talents, and make it 10. That's what we want to do, so we can do this for him, and we can be wise money stewards. Amanda, thanks so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
And join us again next week. We'll be talking more about money mindset mentoring for you.